I'm John Duffy. I meet people that faced fear and chose courage instead. Their stories will move you, challenge you, and remind you what's possible. This is the Live Courageously podcast. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Live Courageously podcast, show number 95. I'm your host, John Duffy, and Live Courageously has been the conscious theme of my life for the last 4 or 5 years since the beginning of the pandemic in 2020. Only 10% of podcasters create 100 podcast shows, and I'm only 5 away from that milestone. So stay tuned, and I hope you join me in spreading the message of living courageously by subscribing to my YouTube channel of the same name, sharing the show, and supporting our mission. Today's show is with ANN-MARIE MURRELL. She's a very special woman, a very courageous friend, and a light in the world. And on a special day today, with the release of her book, I haven't done a live podcast in a while, but today called for it. So ANN-MARIE is an author, a journalist, an actress, former political commentator, and much, much more. ANN-MARIE invites readers into the most personal chapter of her life in her new book, Walking Each Other's Home, A Caregiver's Journey of Grace, available today on Amazon, July 1st, and drawing from her first-hand experience caring for both of her parents through Alzheimer's disease and now facing her own early onset Alzheimer's diagnosis. Murrell offers a deeply honest and faith-centered exploration of caregiving. Walking Each Other Home combines practical advice, spiritual encouragement, and moving personal reflections, anchored in God's timeless fifth commandment: honor your father and your mother. A quote from Anne is, "Caring for my parents was the greatest honor and the greatest challenge of my life. I wrote Walking Each Other Home not only to help others, but also as a guide for my own children someday." Endorsed by leading voices like Kevin and Sam Sorbo, Nancy Stafford, John Quinn, editor of The Chosen, Mike Huckabee, and others, and with a foreword by Vincent Curatola of The Sopranos, Walking Each Other Home fills a vital gap for families overwhelmed by caregiving, grief, and life transitions. So with that, let me welcome ANN-MARIE to Live Courageously. Thank you so much for joining me today. I know it's a crazy day with your book being released. Thank you for taking the time.
Of course. Thanks for having me on. I missed you.
I miss you too. It's been a long time. And you know, I always like to ask people, since you say, you know, we both miss each other, how did we first meet? Do you remember how we first met, or what, where?
On the Glazov gang, on Jamie Glazov's show. It was, I don't even remember what year. It's been a long time.
I know.
We used to do the show together.
It feels like, God, you know, I always say, when people ask me how long ago, I always say 10 years. And it's like, my 10 is usually 20. It was 20 years ago. I really have no clue. But yeah, we were on the show a couple of times together. And then we went to a bunch of events together. And then of course, you know, we're going to talk about your journey from leaving us out here in Hollywood and why. But that's how we met. But the first question I like to ask you, and it kind of leads into all the things you do, both, you know, in life, and I've been following your posts on Facebook for years, and you know, I'll talk a little bit about that later as well, because I think some of them have just been so powerful. But what does Live Courageously mean to you?
And I love your intro. It means, I think it's 365 times in the Bible, it says, do not fear, variations of that. That's what that means to me. As soon as fear enters, that's not God. That blocks you from doing what you need to do, what you should do, could do in your life. And just living your life without fear. And for me, as long as I'm following God's path and not my own, that has been the most courageous thing I've ever done in my life. So that's what it means.
Well, you have a lot of examples, and you've shared, you know, one of the things I've seen over the years on your Facebook page and post, you shared so much vulnerability and so much of the challenges you went through in your life when you made the move back home. But let's start a little bit before that. You were out here active in a lot of different things, as an actress, as an author, as a public figure. You were doing all kinds of amazing things out here in Hollywood. Mm-hmm. And then you got hit with a a situation that you didn't expect, and then it forced you to make a decision. So why don't you share a little of that for background for the audience?
Yeah. I lived my entire life for myself, for my dreams, my passions, my goals in life, and I worked in a lot of different areas of life. I started out. I left Texas when I was barely 20 to be an actress. It was either going to be New York or California. I didn't care which one, but one or the other. That's what I wanted. I left everything behind. I left my family. I rarely ever saw my parents. I went back maybe once a year until 2017. I lived a very lonely, kind of shallow life. And I made a lot of mistakes because I was broken, so broken. And I didn't even know. I really didn't know until I was unbroken. And even in my political years, everything I did was kind of just trying to fill the God-sized hole in my heart that I wasn't aware of. I knew that I was lonely all the time. I mourned my father. He died when I was 5, my biological father. He died in a car wreck when I was 5. I'm wearing his ring today.
Wow.
I mourned him throughout my life, and I was always looking for the daddy. I hate saying that, but it was always looking for the father figure that I didn't feel I had. And once I moved back home, once God directed me back here, a place that I never wanted to come back to, once I listened to someone besides my brain, my own thoughts, my own feelings, every single thing, every aspect of my life changed. I wasn't lonely anymore. For the first time in my life, I wasn't mourning, I wasn't grieving, I wasn't searching, because everything I needed, I found here in Texas, reprioritizing my life and putting God and family first. And they weren't even on my list before. I was always a Christian. Oops, sorry. I was always a Christian. I like to preface that. I was never not a Christian, but I wasn't a Christian in action, and I didn't really understand what that meant.
I just want to go a little deeper because I mean, it's just so many heavy things you just raised about being broken and unbroken, and searching to fill that hole in you, and you hear it, and people hear that, and especially people this being in Hollywood like I am, and people who live out here, people search for something else sometimes, and there's don't really find that. They're out here trying to find something and may never ever find it because they don't know what they're finding. But when you came to that turning point, and not everybody would have had the courage or whatever it took, and that's what I'm going to ask you. What did it take when you made that decision to go back home? Because most people might have, went back a little bit, came back, went back a little bit, but you made a bold and brave decision. Why? Why did you do that?
I didn't want to. The old me wouldn't have done so. But once I first came out here, it was around 2016 when I realized that my parents needed help. And I thought maybe they would have to move someday. And I was actually putting Christmas decorations up and getting ready to go back to California. And my dad, my stepfather, had a heart attack. Went to the hospital. They lived almost an hour away from a hospital. And it was terrifying for my mother. And I realized then that if I hadn't been there, she would have had to drive at age 82 by herself, petrified. I just couldn't even imagine what that could be, what that meant. So I talked to my sister Lisa, who anyone who's going to read this book will know her name so well. My sister Lisa, who always lived here. She was always with them. I was the prodigal son, I was the prodigal daughter who went away and never expected to come back. So we decided that eventually Mom and Dad would move to where she lives in Longview, Texas. And we were thinking of doing that when we got back from the hospital. Well, when he was in the hospital, the doctor came out and he said, well, how long has your father had dementia? And that was the first time I'd ever heard anything like that. And Mom and Lisa were like, yeah, he's been a little off for quite a while. I had no idea. So I was back. When we got back from the hospital, I was undecorating, putting the rest of the Christmas decorations away, and found black mold in their closet. Dad had they lived in an underground house way out in the woods. It was great while he was able to maintain it, but there was water damage and toxic black mold. So I had to get them out of their house fast. I did it. I got them into an independent living facility. Everything was wrapped up in a nice bow. I was getting ready to go back to California. And then I was visiting with Dad. Mom was at the grocery store. And I got a call. They got a call. I answered the phone, and it was a local store saying that Mom was there trying to buy groceries with her Social Security card.
Wow.
So that night, for probably the first time in my life, in my adult life, I got on my knees and I prayed, because I had no idea what to do. I kind of knew, but I didn't want to. I had so much in California to lose. And that night I had a dream, a vision, whatever it was something so impactful that when I woke up, it was like Christmas morning for Ebenezer Scrooge. I was changed forever. I knew exactly what I had to do, and I did it without ever looking back. So that's what happened. That's a lot. I'm sorry.
No, it's just, it changed your life, but you know this, not everybody would have been able to make that decision. Not everybody, but like you said, you prayed, and you had that life-changing a moment. Not everyone does that, has that, goes through that. And then of course you had to disrupt all your life and start over. And you grew up in is it Waco, Texas? Is that where your family is?
No, they were in Hugh Springs, Texas.
Oh,
Waco's
okay.
big. Hugh Springs is a sneeze.
Okay.
It's close to Turkey Creek. It's not. It's too. I always said it's like 200 miles away from anything.
Wow.
Yeah.
So being an hour from the hospital, being an hour from all that, yeah, they were out there in the rural areas, yeah.
Yes.
So what was you disrupt everything, you come home, and then take us through that, and we're going to link this all into the book, because all this is in the book, and I know we'll talk about that too. I downloaded the ebook today when it went live, and I recommend everybody read this book, because I've seen some of the stories on Facebook, the little pieces that I'm sure are going to be part of what's in the book. But everything I read was so powerful, emotional, and heart-touching that I just recommend everybody, please, please, please read this book. But take us on that journey. You know, now you get down there, and now, you know, because you had a busy life in California.
Oh, I did. Yes, I did. It was fun and dynamic, and I had the big beautiful house on the hillside with the view of the whole world, and we had amazing parties up there, and I was friends with movie stars and TV stars and politicians and the works. And I was traveling. I was at least a couple of times a week. I spoke at different events or all over the country. I was all over the place. But again, I would pace back and forth on my balcony, and I felt like, what is missing? What in the world is missing? And what I should have been doing was praying back and forth and talking to the creator of this universe, instead of thinking that it was something that I could fix by doing just more. So when I came home, and no one, this is funny too, I grew up, all the friends that I ever grew up with out here, they knew that I was never going to stay in Texas. And I was the last person they ever thought would come back. And they don't even know this new me. It's been fun getting to know each other all in a different way, because and my children, my family now is incredible. Every single thing changed, every aspect of my life. So whatever I lost, all the pretty stuff, all the glamour and the glitz, oh, I am so much more blessed. This is so much more beautiful a life than I ever had in my entire life.
I just lost my light there, but I think just I got to pause on that. I just got to pause on that because it's so on against what you would expect to believe or think, and you're speaking it so authentically and from the heart, but it's like you would think, well, that can't be right. It's like you're giving all this up. You're going to be somewhat depressed about it. You're going to feel resentful about it. That's kind of what I think people would think, and yet you're sharing the opposite, and your example of the opposite, which I just got to take a pause and just take it in, because I just think it's a powerful reality that you're sharing.
Yeah. And especially going from, LA to a little small town out here, that's the first thing everybody kept saying is how are you adjusting to this? And I'm just a different human being than I was. I am not anything like I was before. And some of the people, I lost people along the way because they didn't necessarily want anything to change with me in my life. And that's probably the only hard part. But I brought with me on a trailer, I had a cute little BMW Z4. I always had those kind of cars, and I sold it a couple of years ago because it just wasn't me anymore. And I was like, I don't know. The best thing I compare this on The Chosen, which my dear friend John, do you know John Quinn?
Yes, I do.
You
I'm going to put his quote up right here about your book, Walking Each Other Home, John Quinn. Yeah, I do know him, and attend different things, and was at another event that he happened to be at a church. A friend asked me to come. He was getting baptized, and he said, come to this baptism. And of course, I didn't know John Quinn was going to be there, but he was. It was his church. And so keep going with that.
Well, the best example I can give for what happened to me was in the scene in the Chosen, when Jesus asks Matthew to follow him, and he has this beautiful life, and this, he's rich, he's wealthy, and he just doesn't even think twice. He just drops every single thing and goes, and without ever looking back. And that scene was the best way that I could describe the way it was for me. It was so easy.
Wow.
And the me from how long now? 8 years ago wouldn't know this me. I'm still getting to know this me.
Well, you talk about, I'm gonna put it up real quick. This is the book, Walking Each Other Home. It's on Amazon. The ebook is on today, and the actual hardcover and paperback will be on shortly. So you go to Amazon and please buy it. Please write reviews about it. But you started writing this book 7 years ago. You mentioned 8 years ago now, right?
Yeah.
And when you started writing it, tell us about that. You didn't see it as a book. You were just writing, right?
Yeah, no, it was just my daily schedule. It was just a way to keep up with both my parents. They both had Alzheimer's, and my dad was a veteran, so I had to deal with VA things. I had power of attorney over medical and finance. I had to take over everything. And that's another thing with me. I barely knew how to use an ATM card. And this is so embarrassing to say that, but I didn't know anything about finances. I didn't want to know. I didn't care. And I was juggling everything. So it started out, and then they also had so many different medications they were taking and doctor's appointments. So I used it as a schedule. And then I started writing. I don't know how to do this. I got stumped today. I've got to pray harder. Then it started turning into journaling and really pouring my heart out. And some days that's what I was sharing on Facebook. And when I started doing that, when I started posting things on Facebook, that's when I started getting so many personal messages and texts from friends and people I didn't even know asking me questions like, how do I do this? I think my mother has dementia. What do I? And then people started saying, you've got to write a book. So eventually that's what happened. Eventually it just morphed into this. And I was writing it for an outlet, because sometimes caregiving can be, especially with my mother near the end, the last 6 months, I barely spoke to anyone because she couldn't handle me talking on the phone. She was very paranoid. My friends couldn't come over because that was confusing to her. The only people I really talked to were hospice nurses, my sister, but she was so stressed because she worked 8 hours a day at a very stressful job. It was very solitary. And I was losing my voice except for through my writing. And so it also became therapeutic in a way to just get it out there, to release this. And Mom also had thousands of students all over Texas that just adored her and wanted to also know what was going on. So yeah, writing was everything. It's been hard now because especially after Mom died in 2022, I've been writing and editing this book ever since. And it's almost like some days Lisa would say, are you okay? I'm like, I had to kill Mom and Dad all over again today, over and over and over, writing and reassessing and trying to figure out what works and what didn't in this book. So it was hard, but that's why I'm so glad that it's done now. And I am praying that it's going to be beneficial. And I've already heard from some people, some friends who've read proofs that are putting some of it into action. That's all I wanted. That's all I want from this book. But I would like it to be published today would be nice. So yeah, but
yes, it would. Yeah. You know, the book is a memoir. But it's also a guide. It gives people advice on caregiving. I have my own experience, and it was a life-changing moment in my life. My mother had a stroke and had Alzheimer's in New York, and I was living in Chicago at the time doing my radical politics. And I made a decision to leave and go back to New York immediately.
Yeah.
And, never regretted that decision for sure. And I didn't have as much, full contact to you, but for people who've never dealt with a parent who has had Alzheimer's, it's hard. It's so hard. And, your journey with it. And then you also went through, and I know on Facebook you shared, don't want to know if you want to share any on it, but you also were going through your own physical challenges, your own health challenges. So you had, if you didn't have a little bit on your plate, you had way more than anybody should have on their plate. I don't know if you want to share some of that with the audience, but I know I read over Facebook over the years, and I was always moved by what you wrote.
Oh, thank you, John. Yeah, I have multiple sclerosis, and I was finally diagnosed correctly in 2016, and I was still doing tons of politics and still going and going. And unfortunately, the drug that I was taking, Ocrevus, it stopped the lesions in the last few years, but it also strongly affected my immune system and in particular, my upper respiratory system. So the last year especially was really rough. I got bronchitis about 16 times and ended up in the hospital in January with double pneumonia and critical condition. I was diagnosed with COPD, just like my mother. And also last year, I had been noticing cognitive changes. And some of you, anytime I would mention that, so many of my friends would say, oh, I'm old too. I'm 63.
Sure.
That's normal. A lot of that is just normal aging, forgetfulness. And then also with MS, with brain lesions and different things. And with Ocrevus, with the drugs. So there were a lot of factors. But it was affecting me just enough. And because I'd seen my grandmother with Alzheimer's, my mom, my stepdad, her aunt and uncle, my mom's brother and sister all had Alzheimer's. So I wanted to be sure. And I figured I would be the first person in our family that I know of to get diagnosed before it gets too bad.
Wow.
And I thought maybe I could do something about it if that's the case. And so I saw a psychoneurologist and badly failed. I mean, I failed so badly. I left. It's like a 5-hour thing you have to go through
Wow.
this testing, and they take into account all this everything like aging and all that I was also concerned with. I still failed even with the extras that they gave me. And unfortunately, all of the drugs for dementia affect your upper respiratory system, so I can't take anything. So I'm, for the first time in like 20 years, I'm not on any kind of medication. I'm just doing holistic, a lot of Mary Ruth vitamins and supplements and whatever I can to stay healthy. And so far so good. I had pneumonia again last week, but just really mild. But that's what I'll be fighting more than anything else is COPD, which is ultimately what actually killed my mom.
Wow. You know, I mean, I read so much of your posts over the years, you know, and just to put it in perspective, I mean, you know, when I read it, you know, here you are dealing with, you know, your parents' Alzheimer's, here you are dealing with MS. You know, COVID happened for 2 years. I saw your post about COVID, you know, and your courage and not being afraid. And you, if anybody have been afraid, it should have been you dealing with, obviously, with MS and all the other things that you were faced with. But it's just your post at the time, you know, and I just, that's why I can't recommend this book enough. They just touched me because they were so vulnerable, courageous, and at the same time, in the middle of all that, you were just putting out love and compassion to others and encouraging others in the middle of all the stuff that you were doing. You were giving all that to everybody else. You were that light for other people who came to your post, as opposed to coming and expecting to get depressed by what you're going through. It did the opposite. You just lifted people up. So I want to thank you, and I tell you how much I appreciated it, because I thought it was very moving. But I think everybody who read your stuff, I'm sure, felt similarly, because it was just like, wow, you know, you had to take a breath and go, wow, this is amazing. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for who you are.
But you're making me cry. Do you know that crying really messes up my lungs? So
oh God, I'll stop. Oh, my apologies.
Thank you for that, though.
I prefer to try and make you laugh in that case.
Me too.
But I just wanted to share that with the audience, because I think, you know, it was so special. But take us a little bit more. You know, a lot of people who you've shared the book with, people who I know, friends of mine, like the Sorbos, Kevin and Sam, great human beings. You know, they wrote something for your book. This other actor who I don't know from The Sopranos wrote the foreword for your book. And then you had a bunch of other people, you know, write about the book. So, you know, you built up a wide range of people in Texas and Hollywood, in your life there, who appreciated this and wrote, you know, support for you in the book. Tell us a little bit more about it, about what the book is, and what you want people to take away from it.
I think the main thing that I would encourage, first of all, is prayer. Even while we're talking now, I pray. I'm trying to be more deliberate about how I speak in every aspect of my life now. Pray continuously, pray for discernment, pray for guidance, pray for kindness and patience. And you know, John, having gone through this, you need those 4 things more than just about anything, especially patience and kindness. It's not easy. It's like it's really hard. Those 2 things, especially when you're pushing yourself and you're at the end of your own day and it doesn't end. And then you can't sleep. There's no sleep for a long time too. It's hard. That I would love for people to really make sure their own house is in order. That was something that I wasn't doing when I lived in California. It's like, how can you save the world if your own little circle in your own little life isn't working? And mine wasn't. And make sure that if you're out there doing fundraising and involved in your church, make sure that that your family, that your own people are also taken care of, and that you're giving everything you can to them. I really, really hope that families will get together. And I'm talking right now, if you have teenage kids, if you have adult kids, sit them down and talk about death, talk about life and death, talk about take more control over how you want to leave this world. And of course, we can't control when we do it. But after what I went through with my mom and dad, I made sure that everything that I own is easy to get rid of when the time comes. My mother had, I think, 100 cookie jar collection. She had so many rocks that she loved. She collected about everything. Ask your kids, do you want 100 cookie jars? And if they say no, believe them and start getting rid of them. Start donating, start selling them, give them to your friends, ask other friends and people, do you want some of this stuff? Make sure your kids are on track with what you want, and don't assume that they're not going to fight over your death at the funeral. That's where I've also seen a lot of families break up because they weren't all on the same page. Don't be afraid to announce your death wishes. It's not like Charles Branson days. It's Bronson days. But anyway, yeah.
Well, all that I think is good advice. And I remember before I went back to when my mother was in the hospital, the year before, I was in New York. It was my birthday, and my mom was living with my brother in his apartment. And back then we didn't know what Alzheimer's was and dementia.
Yeah.
We really didn't know it. It wasn't the same knowledge.
Well, it was called they called him senile. My grandmother was senile. Yeah.
And she was starting to hide, like you say, hide things in all kinds of weird places. And it was my birthday, and she goes into the closet and she searches. She brings out this little thing, and she had it wrapped beautifully. It's all wrapped, and she opens it up, and she said, "This is for your birthday." It was 25 pennies, and it broke my heart. It was just like, I didn't cry in front of her, but I just said, "Oh my God!" It was at the same time was the greatest gift because she didn't forget in the midst of all that. And then I knew at that point, I really knew she had a problem. That was the notification to me. But like you say, all those things, planning, being ahead of them. I mean, there's just so much, and I'm sure that's all covered in your book to give people advice. I'm going to jump back just for a minute to go into the past, and then we'll come back to the present if you don't mind. But just, and we won't stay in the past too long because that's not where you are or need to be. But this is kind of a picture of us. I just, on the show when we met. And I think here's another picture of us on the show with you sharing a book or something, I believe that you did at the time. But it was a connection we made, I think, on that show, and we became friends, and it was a good connection. And I just enjoyed what you were doing, your energy at the time. And then of course you went, and I was a different person at the time as you were, and I had changed, and I was on his show, and this was one of my things that I was sharing, how I went from Mao to being a Maoist to a conservative on his show. So it was an interesting journey. We both gone on different journeys, but it was, we knew, we got to know a lot of great people out here and the thing. And that's the thing I think in life. Sometimes I always say there's good, bad, and ugly in life. And if you do the right things, you kind of find yourself around the good, and you kind of, you get away from the bad and ugly, and it exists and it's everywhere. But to have the good in your life, good people, and those are the things. What are the most important things to you that you would sum up the most important things that you've learned and now in life that you would say would be the most important things that people should consider is important in life?
God and family. Okay. Everything else is just stuff. God and family. Make sure that you are in touch with our Creator, with the person who created you, the entire world. Jesus literally brought me home, and it was incredibly, it was miraculous, and I would not be who or what I am right now if I hadn't really changed the pyramid. The God and family, you can have a lot of people in your life, and you can fill yourself with a million friends, a million whatever. if you don't have your support system, if you're not honoring your parents, if you're not loving your children and making sure that they understand what love is and your priorities, then when you get to a certain place in your life, you're going to be really alone. You're going to be the most alone you can even imagine if you don't have those two things in place. And I believe that with all my heart, just because, of what I personally went through. I just told you, I'm so not used to any media anymore. I'm just like, I've got ear pods for the first time in my life, and they're not on. I don't know how to turn them on. This whole time, they just look like earrings, I hope.
That's too funny. But you're right. God and family, and there's a quote that I used in life. That I heard from someone who was kind of a mentor to me. It was like, you can be right or you can be in love, and too many times, and maybe men more than women, but I think both as well. We have the tendency to want to be right. We fight. We're right. What I believe is right. And so when somebody has a different opinion, I'm going to fight that I'm right, they're wrong. And I remember when I was raising my daughter in the really tough teen years, we got into arguments, and I would step away, and that quote would come back to me, and I would step back in and I would say, you're right, I'm wrong. And she would look at me like I was crazy. She was like, oh, well, you're not wrong. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm wrong. You're right. I'm cool with it. I'm all right with it. Because I wanted to get us back to love and get away from me having to be right. And even if I was right, so what? Who cares? Let it go. Go for love. And love is more important than that. So yeah, like you're saying, if you have that and you have those two things in your life, you have a foundation that you can then carry with you. Without that, it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah. Sinking sand.
Yeah.
That's where I used to stand on. Sinking sand. Sinking sand.
Today you're still dealing with all this stuff. Obviously, going forward, I've seen stuff on your Facebook page, and I was like, wow. I mean, some of the travel you've done in the middle of all this was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And great places, Italy, Greece. I just saw some of those things. So, you're living in a scented place, but you're living. You're having a great experience in life with your son, whatever. So tell us a little bit about that. I mean, what does that mean to you, at this time and place in your life?
When I decided to go to Italy, it was after I had the caregiving years, and I realized that I was still ordering groceries to be delivered to the house. I was still kind of a hermit. I wasn't involved in a church yet. I was just starting to go back and just kind of dive. I had my close circle of friends that I saw semi-regularly, but even that, it was really hard for me to get back into the world. So I figured I was going to do something so big, push myself really out there into the world. So yeah, so I went to Italy, and after I was with a group tour, it was a Perillo tour, but the last 2 days I went to Paris by myself. Unfortunately, I ended up with strep throat at the very end of the tour, and I was so sick that I just stayed in bed the first day in Paris. The next day, I just pushed myself out and walked everywhere, and you can hear me coughing in the little videos I made. But anyway, yeah, got home and ended up having to put ear tubes in my ear, and then soon after that, I was sick every day for the whole year. But it was worth it. It was an amazing trip. This year, I went to Greece with my son, and my son and I was a kid when I had him. I was young. I was still so self-centered, and I still didn't put, even with a child, I was still more concerned about me than him.
How old were you when you had him?
I was 22.
22.
22. And still trying to be an actress, still fighting and doing all that kind of world, and still just so in the world instead of raising him the way I really needed to. I regret that in a lot of ways. But now, soon after I moved here, they didn't live far from me, and we all lived in Burbank. They moved out here too.
Wow.
And their lives have changed completely drastically. They never would have had children. Now we have two. I have two grandsons, and it's just the most
Wow.
incredible thing in the whole world. But all of this, they were both baptized last year. They're raising their child in a church. We all live here too. After Lisa moved out of my house, they moved in. So I am, I'm so blessed. I'm so blessed. I don't care how much, if I died tomorrow, I'm so happy, and I am so at peace and so grateful to Jesus for bringing me back here, this beautiful place.
Oh, God bless you on that one. That's for sure. You know, I always say, I do a lot of speaking. I dropped out of high school when I was 15, a Catholic high school. I ended up years later teaching film at a Catholic university. And there was, I told the students, there was a priest and a nun in the class. And I said, well, God clearly had a sense of humor and a bigger plan for my life than I had, that I would end up here teaching at this university. But I always say, I'm blessed by all, because I have family and but I say I'm blessed by the amount of great friends that I have. Because in Hollywood, I'd never been impressed luckily, because I came from the ghetto and I came from the street. I wasn't impressed by glamour and people, because to me, everybody's human. You got strengths, you got weaknesses. You're a celebrity. Yeah, whatever. You're a celebrity. Big deal. Because good people are good people, whether they're famous or they're not famous, they're rich, they're poor. Good people are good people. And so I've just been blessed that I keep meeting great people, and they keep getting put in my life. And everywhere I go, I meet another great person. I'm like, wow. And it isn't like I plan on it. It just happens. And so I'm always blessed by that, because it just always enriches my life. And I try to give back, because that's what it does. But, I think those are the things that mean more, for people who work in Hollywood. You think all that fame and all that, look at me, I'm famous and all. It's really the last important thing in life, the least important thing. It's really what you do with your life, how you serve others, what impact you make. And with all you've done, what you're doing now, whether it's on Facebook or with your book, you're making an impact on others for the better. You're giving them a gift, an inspiration. What you went through, all that suffering, is something you're giving back in a way to touch their lives. That's what life's about to me. And I think that's what, you're who you are. At least that's the way I see it. But
thank you. Yeah, I completely agree. You and I have probably a lot of the same friends, especially Morgan Brittany, who's my co-author on my first book, and just the most normal, down to earth.
Was that book right there?
Yes. Yeah. What Women Really Want, with Morgan and Dr. Gina Loudon. Yeah. She's the most down to earth movie star, TV star, and she should be on Turner Classic Movie. She should be on there speaking every week about her career. She's done everything. And she is one of the most down to earth, normal people I've ever known, which is so, and she's been married to the same person. They have a happy marriage, and she's a grandma, and she's just so normal. There are some really good, and all the people, all the actors, the stars who endorsed my book too, are so normal and wonderful and real. So there are some really good people in Hollywood, but boy, there's some evil out there, John. You could escape, but I understand.
Well, when I first came, that was my experience, because I started acting when I first came to LA. That was what I was pursuing as well. And then I ended up moving behind the camera and being a line producer. And so I started working on all these films. And the people I worked with were just, quite frankly, the evilest people I could imagine. I mean, it was like, God, if the devil appeared, that was them. They were just evil people. And I remember telling myself, if this is all there is, I don't want to do this. I don't want to hang with these people, because I didn't feel like I wanted to be around that at all. But I had to survive. It was a money struggle for me to survive. Mm-hmm. But then soon, because I had that belief, and I would turn things down. They would give me a project after I worked with somebody. They're like, let's work together again. And I would say, no, that's all right. Don't want it. And I would move on. And every time I said no, better things opened up and I met better people. So And then I was like, okay, these are good people. I can work with these people. And that's where I am now. It's like, I don't know anybody that I don't want to work with. All the people I work with are people I like and I love and I consider family. So,
That's a blessing.
you know,
Yeah.
that's a blessing. That is
Mhm.
truly a blessing for me.
Yeah.
Let me see. Is what's telling me? Oh God, we're having an interest. And I just got a message from Facebook saying that the stream ended, but it doesn't. I don't know why. I don't think it ended. Weird. Is it still going? I mean, let me
see. I don't know.
I think it's going, but I keep talking as if it is. But otherwise, we're having one of those starting to glitch. Are you
trying to find it? Hold on.
See if we're on there. I think we are. I'm hoping we are. Otherwise, it's an interesting day with your book and now with the podcast. I think we're being tested here.
Oh, always. This has been the most testy day.
You know. So anyway, let's see as we try and find if we're on, and I'm hoping that we are. But I'm going to keep acting as if. And
yeah, I don't see it
going. No. Wow, that is fascinating. Anyway, okay, it ended.
And that was the first time. Overall.
Do you see it?
All of this. Yeah. We were both baptized last year. You're raising your child in the church. We all live here.
That is.
Out of my house.
Yeah, 41 minutes and it ended. Wow, that was freaky.
Wow.
I've never had that happen. Never, ever, ever. Wow.
I'm telling you, today has been weird.
It
weird.
Is.
In every direction. I mean, weird.
Because I was going to play your little YouTube video as well. We can always do this again if you want to another time, but this piece is at least 41 minutes. I'm just, because it started off saying Instagram wasn't working, and then it just came on and said, well, Facebook is having problems.
Maybe I said Jesus too many times.
I don't know. I don't know. Wow, that's just very weird. But just to once again to always look at the positive. Somebody just from LinkedIn said at least 41 minutes was caught. Wow, that's pretty cool. So and then this one person just said earlier on, which I think if it's nothing else, he said, a true blessing seeing this as divine timing.
Oh.
So, if nothing else, if that person was touched, it was worth it. Even if we got cut off after 41 minutes, it still was. People saw it, and it'll be replayed. I'll replay it again, of course. And then if we want to do a part 2, just like when your book comes out, part 2, and when you get it on Amazon,
we can do.
we could do another one. But how did you feel about the show? So what went down, what I talked about, what was your take? Now we're not.
No, it was good. You're really good. It was so easy. I didn't feel it was. You made me feel really comfortable, and I appreciate that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I started this when I was up in Canada with Kevin and Sam doing Left Behind: Rise of the Antichrist. And it was during COVID. And of course, everybody up there was in panic mode. And we were like walking around without masks. And they were like, oh my God, these guys are crazy, because we weren't afraid. And I woke up at 2 a.m. one night and I was like, I was doing Facebook Lives of me talking for an hour. And then I was like, I need to do something to put out a message of courage instead of fear. And I know all these courageous people. So maybe I'll start a podcast and just, interview them. And this way I can stop talking and I can just let other people do the talking. So I started it thinking I was going to do about 3 or 4 of them, and ended up, I'm up to 95, about to hit 100. And I got about another 75 people that I know that I want to do. So
wow,
it kind of it took its own path, and it just went on a journey, and it's just great. I mean, I just enjoy hearing people's stories and what their life's about or what's important to them, and and then just letting them share that. So it's kind of fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Your follow-ups are really good. Like when we're talking, it's this really good flow. There's no, doesn't feel stilted or like you missed something or anything. The only other thing I would have talked about was the way my dad died during COVID, because and maybe I don't need to, maybe I wasn't supposed to say that today. I don't know how that works.
But yeah, and you were saying earlier in the conversation about writing the book, you had to relive it, and go through it again, which once again took another sense of strength and courage because it's easier to like put it behind you when something happens that you don't want to have to relive that pain, the pain of it. I mean, there was a lot of love and positive, but there was pain, and who wants to keep experiencing pain? And so you were saying that, and I know when I first moved to California, I had a girlfriend for like 3 weeks, but we got really close and then broke up, and she moved on and got married and then got married again. But she had a baby, and her baby died of AIDS. Her husband died of AIDS. And then I was with her when she died of AIDS. And so I spent a lot of time with her up until the point when she died. And then 2 weeks later, that gave me the courage to leave New York and go to California. Mm-hmm. And then I ended up doing a part of a one-man play of like acts that I wrote called Goodbye, My Friend. And I performed it in Hollywood about her story, about our relationship and then her dying of AIDS. Mm-hmm. And it was like every night after I would get off the stage, I'd go sit in my car and just cry. And it just boom, it just hit me so freaking hard to like relive it. And so when the play was over, I was like, it was like letting go of having to have that experience over and over again. But but yeah, we if you want to do it, definitely I'll do it again. I mean, I think we can, handle it again. And for me, the hard thing though, Ann-Marie, is like, I see people who are podcasters, and I don't want to be a podcaster per se. That's not my goal. It's like, I don't need another, thing but it's like they have the equipment, they have somebody working on it, they do everything. And I'm here, like, I'm juggling it all by myself. I'm like trying to make this go up, and I'm making sure I'm paying attention to that. But more importantly, I'm trying to listen to everything that you're saying, right, so I can respond and not lose that track. That's the hard part, but that's the most important part. The other stuff is just, you got to do it, but that's not important. It's listening to you. That's important.
Well, you're so good at this. And I hope that you can get your own studio and your own producer or whatever you need. But yeah, you're very gifted.
Yeah. Well, once again, I'll see if it's something that has a purpose, a bigger purpose. And if it does, then maybe. And if it doesn't, it's like, even if I just do this and it has this purpose, that's still fine. It's just, the more important thing is I get to share these great stories like yours with people. And to me, that's the important thing. Everything else is, whatever, it's fine. It's all fine. But so.
You know what? I think I just figured out. I thought I didn't have on the microphone, but I got to learn how to use these and all this now.
Yeah, I don't know if if you just go on either Google or ChatGPT, just how to connect it, they give you the simple answers, and you can just get an answer quick and just solve it. But especially because you're going to be doing a bunch more podcasts, I would imagine.
Yeah, I'm doing Dinesh tomorrow too.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and I'm doing. Do you know Joe Messina?
Joe Messina.
He was in our little, Republican FOA group.
Maybe by face. I don't know if I know him by name. Yeah. I'm not sure.
I'm talking to him tonight. He has a podcast. So It's been mostly just my friends, like my friends from before, getting to see y'all again. If nothing, this is the only kind of media I care about doing. It's like
I
it's
hear you.
not my thing anymore.
I hear you. Now, what town are you in now? Are you in
It's called Longview. It's
Longview?
northeast Texas. It's kind of on the tip of Arkansas and Louisiana. They call it the Arklatex.
Oh, okay.
So
So it's probably like, 4 or 5 hours north of Houston.
yeah,
About
pretty
that,
much.
right?
Yeah, a little more, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's far from everywhere. It's about almost 3 hours from Dallas. It's out in the middle of nowhere. Actually, Matthew McConaughey is from Longview, from this
Oh,
town.
okay.
So he went to school here. But otherwise,
Well, I'm supposed to go down to Houston for an event that we're putting on, and then we're going to try and film a proof of concept for Angel Studios for a true story of a friend of mine who lives in Houston. He's a boxer. He was almost a world champ, and ended up taking Iraq to the Olympics in 2004 during the war. And amazing true story. I mean, once again, God's calling. He went to Iraq to kill bugs on the military base because his dad was a pest exterminator and he had his pest license. So he said, he told his wife at the time, he said, I think God's calling me to a mission. His wife said, I don't think God's talking to you. Don't go. He said, no, I got to go. So he went to Iraq in 2003 and he's killing bugs on the military base. Crazy. And then gets into a beef with a colonel from Texas. They become friends. They find out about his boxing. He starts training the U.S. soldiers, and the Provision Authority hears about him. They come to him and they go, hey, what are the odds you can put together an Iraqi boxing team for the Olympics in 10 months? And he said, you're kidding me, right? He said, the odds are 1,000,000 to 1. They're like, great odds. Just need the one. Go do it. And so now he has 10 months to train these Iraqi kids, qualify them, get Iraq back in the Olympics, and not get killed by Al-Qaeda. And he pulls it off and takes them to the Olympics.
Wow.
And so God gave him the mission that he thought he was going over to kill bugs. He ended up with a much bigger mission than bug killing.
That's incredible.
Yeah, wow. Great human being. And he has he calls it Fight a Nation. It's his boxing ministry that he does in the gym in Houston for these young kids, and basically ministers to them and uses boxing as the thing to change their life. So it's pretty cool.
That's so neat. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's got to be a movie.
Yeah, it has to be. I've been working on it for probably close to 10, 12, 13 years. So yeah, it'll happen.
Yeah.
It'll happen, God willing. But anything else? Otherwise, thank you so much. I'm so bummed, well, not so bummed, just slightly bummed that we didn't get to the finish, but at least we got all this done, and yeah. I got a chance to reconnect with you. So that's cool.
It was really fun. Wasn't painful at all, except for when you made me cry.
I'm sorry. I apologize. I apologize.
But thank you for that too.
But well, you hang in there. I'll stay in touch. I'll drop you this. I'm gonna most likely re-air it on Sunday at 6 o'clock anyway, even if it's short. And I'll do a little, disclaimer explaining that we got bumped by Facebook, maybe accidentally. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah, I'm wondering about the Amazon, everything today. Right before I spilled my whole water all over. It is all kinds of weird things.
It is weird. It is weird, right? Because one, but then two, it's like, okay, this is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I'll share that with you. I'll send you the information, put it up on Sunday, and then we can stay in touch and maybe do another one. After you get through some of your other podcasts that you do for the book and everything.
Okay.
And I wish you the best. I look forward to getting a hardcover book, getting you to sign it for me. So I'll have that. So you have a great rest of the day and the rest of the week.
Okay. Thank you, John.
You're very welcome. Good seeing you.
Good to see you too.
Bye.
Bye.